Hey guys, we have a very special guest here on the podcast, Steve Orlando. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. Glad to have you.
Hell yeah, I'm happy to be on.
Yeah, I've noticed that you have a very diverse portfolio, and you do a lot of different types of genres. Would you say that you lean, like, as a reader, not writer, but towards a certain genre more than others, or are you as diverse as your portfolio?
I think that I mean, if you force me to say, I would easily say that I'm a science fiction guy. If my Desert Island franchise is definitely Star Trek. But with that being said, I try to what I put out there, as you said, I try to make as wide ranging and surprising as possible, as unexpected as possible. And with that in mind, I try to do that work. You have to consume a lot from all those different genres as well. And that doesn't just mean comics, or it doesn't just mean books. It means information and content of all kinds. So, I mean, yes, as a consumer, as an audience member, if I had to choose, I would be in space and time all day. It already hurts me that I had to choose between Doctor Who and Star Trek. But the nice thing is, it's 2022 and we don't have to choose. So I can take in that, along with things that are nothing like science fiction. And honestly, I think it's a really wild time. We're trying to push it as much as we can in comics, but in general, I was just talking to one of my editors last night, and it's exciting to me what you can find when it comes to content and it comes to settings and things like that. Like my guy and I just finished watching The Bear, which I highly recommend if you haven't seen it, which is on Hulu, and it's like a dramedy about working in like the restaurant world, right? And like I was just talking to my editor about it. We both are obsessed with the show. And both of us are like, oh man, I don't think we could ever pull this off, at least in American comics, unless somewhere there was a cape, unless somewhere something happened, maybe on Krakoa if it's like Grey Crow's restaurant or something. But in general, which will be appearing in future episodes of Marauders. But
yeah, let's talk about your Marauders run, because Dom has not shut up about it since we've been backstage.
Well, thank you for checking it out. I have been really, really happy to come to the X-Men office. Obviously, this is a job that we are all lucky to have if we have it. It's a privilege. It's an honor to be able to make my living making comics. But that being said, it's still a job we all go through sort of up and downs with how we view the industry. And I'm saying that because coming to the X-Men office has put me at like my highest high and my most excitement about comics in a long, long time. And that doesn't just mean what I'm doing in Marauders. That's actually the least of what I mean. I just mean the creative energy, the excitement, the feel of the room, and everybody pushing each of us to do our best possible work, and to be fearless, to tell stories that are big and surprising. The first time I came in the room, we just debuted Threshold in Marauders 4 this past week. 10,000 years of first appearances, a whole mutant society, 2 billion years in the past. And, I threw that out when we were talking about what we could do in Marauders, and it was Hickman that said, no, like, not only is that a great idea, but you should do it bigger. You should lean in and make it even bolder and wilder and spend more time there. So it's a great time for me. I felt better about being in this business than I have in a long time because of what's going on, not just the Marauders, but in the X-Men line in general. And I really hope that that's coming through. I think it is. Maybe it's even too frantic. Maybe there's too much going on. But I'm super proud of the book. I'm super proud of Eleonora and upcoming Andrea Ricardo. And yeah, I mean, like to see the excitement of the fans and the support of my peers and the office to say, no, go big, endeavor and really give people things they haven't seen before. Doesn't always happen, without too much inside baseball. But that's what it's like being an X right now, and I hope that's coming through to you folks.
Oh, for sure. I for one, I'm really enjoying the book. Thank you again for, it's interesting too, because you're taking the title over from Jerry, who did 27 issues and an annual. I've been reading all the X-Men stuff religiously since House of X and Powers of 10. So I have two questions, just because you brought up the Threshold with issue 4 coming out not too long ago. The first one is, how did you get to be on board with the pirate crew that's now in space and all of that? Did you pitch it? How was that like? And the second question is, how did you come up with the idea of Threshold, and what was it making, like doing this new mutant civilization thing?
Well, the first thing is easy. I had been floating around Marvel, and I'd done mutant-related stuff 2 other times before. I had done Curse of the Man-Thing, which had an X-Men issue, and I had done Magneto the Mutant Force. And I saw, we all say that we don't look at social media, but we all, okay, so like I had seen people being like, oh, this was Marvel's big plan. Steve did these 2 one-shots. He's definitely going to the X-Men office. I'm here to tell you there was no big plan. For people who have like a Charlie Day conspiracy board, it really, I wrote both of those issues being like, fuck, I may never write X-Men again. I got to get everything in. I got to make it exciting. I got to make it as good as possible because this might be the only time. Funny thing is, that's also how I got my Wonder Woman run. I had an inventory issue, which if you folks don't know is like if a book is running late, sometimes they will commission one-off issues that they can slot into the schedule, so that you folks get your comics on time. And I did a one-shot there, and it was so popular that I ended up taking over that book for a while. And lo and behold, I did these little like tidbits of mutant stuff. And about 1.5 years ago now, or even more, Jordan called me and told me that Jerry was leaving Marauders, and that he was taking over X-Men, and that was an opportunity, and that I could pitch something brand new and destroying the office, but would I consider taking over Marauders? And the thing is, I myself have been a Cape Pride fan for a long time. It's hard as a young Jew not to like Cape Pride. Yes. But what really got me interested is that, you said you read Jerry's run. I love Jerry's run. And I thought it almost was poetic, or not poetic rather, but karmic, that at the outset, the Marauders have 2 missions. They are getting the Krakoan medicines via Hellfire trading to the places where they didn't sign the Krakoan treaty, but they think people need them anyway. So they're mutant black marketing these life-changing medicines, and then they're rescuing mutants who can't get to Krakoa under their own steam. And by fate or providence, I think Jerry took an interest in the Hellfire trading side for most of his run, and that I saw in that an amazing opportunity to do something that is more in my vein, because I tend to be a things blow up, wild idea writer. And here was this team with the mission that had sort of been sidelined because of all these other Hellfire intrigues. Understandably, Sebastian Shaw did kill Cape Pride for a while. That can be inconvenient. So I saw that as an opportunity. And the other thing is, people who, I can't stop running my mouth about it online and things like that. I think people know by now, disaster relief, rescue, charity, these are things that are really close to my own heart. After Hurricane Michael hit, I flew down to Florida to help dig out Panama City and feed people who had nothing, with my friend Jose Andres. And I was there, I've lived it. So when I write about rescuing Marauders, or it's not something that I'm just pulling out of my ass or like reading an article about. It's things that I've done. And so when I saw that opportunity, I thought, yes, like this, I have to lean in, and we have to take Marauders, because I really can bring something to the table. I like to think, every creator likes to think they always bring something to the table that other people can't. But it really was true in this instance. Not many of my peers have gone, and slept on the floors of FEMA offices, and handed out sandwiches at 10 p.m. with solar lights strapped to their heads. But I have. So it felt like an opportunity to talk about what I did and what I learned with my friends there who are still doing it. Of course, while blowing up a ton of shit, because it's still Krakoa, which we're doing as well.
Awesome. Yeah. No. And I was about to say that, like, I really liked the way, I had no idea you were Jewish as well, which is awesome. And so I wanted to say, because Cape Pride is one of my favorite characters because of said things, I was very happy with the way
talk to everyone from my elementary school. They seem to know immediately. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, but you handled her really well, and I was really appreciative of it. And I have to say, one of my favorite things that you did, and also just what Marvel does in general, was the Darkhold series, and having like this little anthology-esque, kind of series with a series of one-shots and stuff, and with the Alpha and Omega. Now, did you actually like curate that, or did you just write the Alpha and Omega, or how did that work exactly?
Curate is a strong word because I wanted to give people, for better or worse, I wanted to give people the freedom to tell their story. So, folks knew the prompt, which was to say that, when these characters read the Darkhold, this, worst version of themselves, this broken, mad, cracked version of themselves becomes reality. And so with the middle one-shots, we said, well, now go and imagine, what that story could be for these characters. But I didn't want to say what it should be because I wouldn't want someone to tell me that, like that's the respect I have for my peers. So we gave them the prompt and let them run wild. And then, of course, we plotted the bookends to sort of be the supernatural action book you want on either side of that.
Yeah. I loved it. It felt really, especially one of my favorite ones was the Iron Man one, and just like all the body horror and all that kind of stuff that came with it. It was really good. I have the whole thing in issues. I loved it front to back, and I'm gotta also hand it to the guys over at Marvel with the synergy. Me and Dom are always talking about like the synergy right now with the movies and TV and the comic books is actually really good. It's a lot more cohesive, and I start paying attention now. Ever since I saw Doctor Strange and then they had the Darkhold in there, I was like, okay, everything's coming together. So now I'm paying attention to everything coming out. Like, am I gonna see this guy? Am I gonna see this? Like, who's next? Yeah. But I love your Marvel work, and also, you did a lot of DC stuff too. Specifically,
I did. I was at DC from like 2015 to 2020, so a fair amount of time.
Yes, and you did a lot of big work there, like your JLA stuff, which I actually didn't read, but Dom read it all. Actually,
I did. I remember. So my story with the whole JLA and all of that other stuff was my cousin in the Philippines, which she would do, and she did this from 2012 onwards with the Jeff Johns Justice League run up, and continue to give me a whole bunch of trades. And so a lot of those trades came into my hands, and eventually I got up to the point when I was like 16, 17, and I got the Road to Rebirth JLA trades. And the team was interesting. You had Killer Frost and Vixen, and this team of like Lobo and all of these different guys. How was writing JLA for you when you were at DC? Does it differ, like say if you're writing a solo or a team book? How does your writing style differ on that mindset?
Oh, it's different because team books are much harder. I don't even know. Listen, if you told me I still hadn't figured it out, I would believe you, right? Because like there's always more to learn, and I think that I'm always excited when people like JLA, but like any person, if I go back and look at it, I'm like, oh fuck, I should have done this, and this, So like, and it's only worse, now as time passes. But that, by the way, goes for I would argue that anybody does that when they look at their own work. And then sometimes, conversely, I'm the person at a con, like, if there's a lull, I'm like reading my own books and like cackling because I'm such an asshole, like, so it can really go either, because it can really go either way. But I was excited to write Justice League of America specifically because that is, one of the first books I got when we finally got a comic store in my town was like a random issue of the Grant Morrison, Howard Porter JLA from the late 90s. So to be on the book, now granted that was the lead Justice League book at the time. There was no book just called Justice League, but one way or another, to be on JLA almost 20 years, it was 20 years after I first bought, like, not by no means my first comic, but my first comic like monthly from a comic store, because we didn't have one of those for a long time where I grew up, was really surreal to me. Yeah, and I was definitely excited about it, and we tried to do, in some ways JLA hits on some of the same themes as Marauders. I think Marauders maybe has a little more focus because I'm older and more experienced now. But we try to do something different and give people something different with that book. And I think, every time someone brings it up, it's really exciting for me because I know in that moment I succeeded. I do personally really, I loved the Microverse arc if I had to pick one, but like, because it was just kind of like doing Star Wars with Justice League. But I am, and it was still strange, like strange enough for me. I mean, I grew up reading like Peter Milligan and obviously Gmo, and Warren before his it was revealed that he was a piece of shit. And Rachel Pollack, you know, like all these things. So like, I'm proud a lot of Justice League. I think we gave people the blockbuster that they want, but we also gave them the weird that I don't know if they want, but I wanted as a kid, and hopefully people still want now.
For sure. Did you have a favorite character writing? Was it Ray? Was there a guy or someone on the team that you were like, man, every single, like, you know, you wake up or you go, you know, you do the script and I want to go write this person right now?
Oh, I feel like it should be obvious that it was Vixen. She got all the best moments.
She did.
I mean, she regenerates from like 2 cells. So yeah, I mean, like and I remain a big Vixen fan. I always think that she should be elevated more than she has been.
100%.
And not just because of her power, but because of her story. You know,
Yeah.
like I think I can't recall because I am, as I said, getting old now. But I feel like at some point she tells Batman, I mean, like she in her life has done everything Bruce Wayne did without a preloaded fortune while being a black woman. You know, like she became a billionaire. She didn't have rich parents. She became a billionaire after seeing both her parents die, and perhaps even worse, not at the same time. You know, years apart. And you know, all while having many more societal and institutional hurdles than someone like Bruce would ever have. So I think that I can't imagine a world if the DC universe were real, she would at minimum like she would be an icon.
Yeah,
she would be an icon for everybody. So I always think that she needs more of a spotlight.
Yeah, I actually had a friend that did a fan thing. Where she played Vixen and her friend played Zatanna, and they did like this YouTube thing, and it was hilarious. But I agree with you. She I think one of the bigger spotlights that she had was in the Bruce Timm JLU. Like that was like her first like big spotlight, like where she was like a little bit more like in the inner circle doing more things. And I really like the voice that you I really hope that you brought like a strong voice to that, like and watch like having the grind and all that kind of stuff. Like that's important to her character. And I've always said that I'd love to. I've said this multiple times on multiple podcasts, but I want a young Amanda Waller story. Like, how did Amanda Waller get her way up? You know, something like really deep and written with some truth and stuff. But,
I mean, if you do that, it's got to be a pure. Well, so the thing about Amanda Waller is, I mean, I love her. I put her. I mean, she's been in my stuff. I don't know if you guys know that Suicide Squad cover where she's just like putting Batman up against a wall. It's like one of my favorite covers ever. But the thing about her is that like, it's not like she could have a lot of origins, but to me, it's so indelible that she grew up in Cabrini Green. Which, if you don't know, was like this terrible housing project, iconically so.
Oh wow.
And in the real world, that is. And so like I feel like it's not the extent of like, well, how are we gonna? Well, actually, now that mutants can resurrect, it doesn't matter. But for a long time, it was like, how are we gonna keep Magneto not dead, but also having lived through World War II? And in the same way, like it's not that it has to be, but if I would love to see her upbringing there, because like that place was the best example. Have you seen the movie Candyman?
No, I have not.
Yeah.
Well, if you ever watch the original, it's shot in Cabrini Green. What's left of it, but like it was like if you read the wiki, it was like one of the worst places on earth. So I really agree, and I would want to see it. If I were to do it, I would definitely make it like. I would want to set it in real time in some ways,
exactly.
So that we could go there. And, you know, Tom did that story where Frank Miller was a Rorschach and it was set in the 80s and it was fine. Right. So, like, it could be done.
Period pieces are great. But I have to, I said this, I always talk about this, because I don't know if you know this, but we work at a comic book store. So we are always on top of, like, selling your stuff. And I always tell people that the first thing I ever read of yours was your Martian Manhunter versus Marvin the Martian, and that's when I became a fan. you definitely don't remember this, but I used to work for Top Cow, and I met you at New York Comic Con like right after that had been put out, and I came and told you, and I was like, dude, that was great, I loved it, I can't wait to read more of your work. Like that, at that point, that was the only thing I had known. And when I found out you're actually doing a Martian Manhunter series, I jumped right on it, and you exceeded my expectations, man. Like the tone, the way that you work with the dialogue and just the storytelling and the art, it all flowed really well together. Now, are you a big Martian Manhunter fan? Like, is this a character you've always wanted to write, or did this kind of just fall on top of your lap?
Oh, no. I mean, he's my favorite DC character. I started campaigning for that when I got to DC, and I think it got approved in 2017 or 2018, and then Riley, had a long lead time. So it was like, by the time you folks got it, it was like in production for almost 2 years.
Oh, wow.
But the thing is, everybody knew he was my favorite character. I'm actually looking, if I look up, I have 2 pages from the Marvin the Martian issue in my living room. I have the Just Add Water spaceship, and then I have the page that has Marvin, the little shot of Marvin's version of Mars, where there's other like weird, like globe head people there. But the thing is, to answer your question, like, it's well known that he was my favorite character there. That's actually how the Marvin the Martian thing came up. Dan called me. I was out of town, and he called me, and he was like, Steve, I'm going to say not two words, but 2 things. You're going to love the first, and then you're going to hate me at the second. And he's like, all right, the first thing, Martian Manhunter. And I was like, I'm there. Doesn't matter what it is. And he was like, good, because the second thing is Marvin the Martian. And at that point, I was just like, you motherfucker. But I mean, obviously I had to say yes. And I should say as well, Frank Barberi, who wrote that with me, he saved me, because I was like really tight scheduling wise, but I couldn't say no. So I brought Frank in. Frank also has a deep love of visual gags, much more than me. So like everything that's like, I'm pretty sure that at least we teamed up on like anything that was like a sight gag is at least me and Frank, if not Frank. Like there's nothing he thinks is funnier than like the scene in Valerian and the Valerian and the whatever, but the Valerian movie,
right,
where you find out that this person is wearing this giant hat, but it turns out it's actually a fucking juicer, because they're gonna eat her. Like that's like, that is like the Barberi sense of humor right there. So yeah, he was a great co-writer on that. Aaron did an amazing job. We would later work together on Wonder Woman, and I mean, Riley and I campaigned for Martian Manhunter after doing Batman Shadow, after doing Night of the Monster Men. Like, we fought hard. First of all, I spent a lot of time convincing Riley it was the next project for him. Then once he was on board, I pretty much just trapped Dan in San Diego until he would say yes. And that's how the book happened. The green room has a bathroom, so if you just stand in front of it, he's kind of got nowhere to go.
Exactly. That's a trick I learned from The Office. Yeah, I get FaceTime with the boss,
I apologize. I'm not going to bullshit you and say, do you remember the story you told? But it's funny that you were at Top Gun, because they were one of the first people that was nice to me when I was like 12 years old and trying to break in. It was actually back when Renee was running it. And all this time, I think about the fact that we don't talk enough about the fact that she was an editor-in-chief of Top Gun, and she's married to Sabretooth.
I talk about it all the time. That's like one of the coolest things in the world. And not just Sabretooth, but also played a Michael Myers in a couple films as well.
Oh, I thought you were going to reveal yourself as like a big Troy fan and bring up his lesser Ajax, but I understand. I understand he was Rob Zombie's Michael Myers as well. That's the zombie ones, right? If I'm correct.
Yes. I believe, and it was funny because Renee had told me that like in their neighborhood, someone that had played Jason also lived in that neighborhood, and they're like, all we gotta do is just get Freddy Krueger to move in, and we're gonna have a full-on horror neighborhood.
Well, no shit. I feel like when you're that big, there's only certain kinds of houses fit you, so they probably do all live near each other.
Right. Well, we've talked about your Marvel, we've talked about your DC. Now I'd really like to talk about your Aftershock stuff. Specifically one that you co-wrote with a friend of ours, Steve Fox, Party and Pray. This one was pretty intense, I have to say.
Well, yeah, the thing about Fox is he's my biggest enemy in the world. But we do make hypothetically good books together. I don't like to say that my work is good or bad, but one of them is up for an Eisner, so someone thinks that they're good. Rainbow Bridge, not the violent stabby book, but I'm happy to talk about Party and Pray because I'm really proud of it. I said I try not to repeat myself. I said I try to do something that's always new and and not just that I haven't done before, but oftentimes that I think is missing on the shelves, missing in the industry. And that's how Party and Pray came about. We wanted to do, Fox loves horror. There are two sides. There are two wolves inside Fox, and one is like a suckling puppy that is afraid of everything, and that's who I co-wrote Rainbow Bridge with. And then the other is like a malicious, vengeful, like werewolf, and that's who I wrote Party and Pray with. So we actually were working on them at the same time, and I just like if I co-write with someone, it's because I think that I see a little bit of a weakness in my own interest and skills, and I want to fill that in with someone who's going to obviously make the work better, but who we can aggregate and make each other better. So. In the case of Party and Pray, I tend to think I'm pretty good at laying out action, but horror is not necessarily a thing. You asked earlier what I like. Something that I don't love a lot is horror, but that's just because I'm a coward and like I can watch like psychological horror and I can watch even David Cronenberg body horror, but it's the cheap jump cut shit that I just can't watch because it works.
Same.
If someone did a jump cut. If someone did a jump cut and it was like just someone holding a cake and $100,000, it would still scare you, right? Because it works every time.
Yep.
And so I just don't fuck with that. But Fox loves that shit. His favorite movie is Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and although I can watch that too because it's not really based on the type of stuff we're talking about, jump cuts. And so I knew that I wanted to bring his knowledge and skills to the table when it came to how we tell the story. Perspectives involved in the story, and
yes.
I think we had a couple core ideas, but Peter Thiel meets Elizabeth Bathory seemed like the most exciting to us, and so that's what we went forward with.
Well, I just real quick, I just have to say because I'm all about suspense, I'm all about all that kind of stuff, and you really had me on the edge of my seat with that one. I just actually literally read it before coming on here today because a friend let me borrow it because he was a big fan of yours and turned me on to all your indie stuff. I actually didn't read any of your Aftershock stuff until today, to be honest. But wow,
there's a shitload of it, my man.
I'm diving deep after this. Let me tell you, man. But
they're my ride or die. Actually, I try to say it in every podcast. And no real shade intended to other publishers because everybody's business model is different. But when the pandemic hit, they were the one publisher that was like, nope, we're full steam ahead, business as usual. And honestly, I don't know if I'd be here without them and the stuff I did during the height of all that stuff. So. I can't say enough good stuff about them, especially the creative support they give to us. So yeah, there's a lot there, but there's a lot there for a reason because they've been really, really good to me, for which I'm thankful.
Yeah, no, Aftershock is definitely to me one of the top indie publishers. I've heard nothing about good things from behind the scenes stuff, and everything they're putting out, it looks professional, looks well done, and it's sellable as hell.
Well, there's more coming. There's at least two unannounced books that I'm doing with them. One that I'm already done writing and is still in art, and another that I just kicked off with a friend who's coming from video games into comics for the first time. So there's more on the way.
Nice.
Sweet. I do have one quick thing to ask about Party and Pray, though. I guess more so with collaborating with Steve, especially on an original graphic novel, one that isn't an issue format. Is there a different mindset that you have when you write an OGN instead of it being, a 32 or 40 page comic issue? Or is it pretty much about the same? How do you go about that?
There is and there isn't, because the reality is you still need to keep you folks engaged. So, it's easy to say, we have 120 pages, there's no rules. But at the end of the day, for context, old school comic guys, the people that taught me how to write when I was 10 and 12, you want to talk about there's got to be a cliffhanger on every page 20, right? They would say actually that there's got to be a major cliffhanger on it. Say a book is, well, at that time 24 pages long. There has to be a cliffhanger on page 12, medium, page 24, big, and even ideally a soft one on every single odd page so that you want to turn the page. So I'm saying all that because, like, yeah, you have more freedom with an OGN, but you can't really let loose. I feel like you're letting your readers down if you just fully go off the rails, because yeah, like, you need to be riveted as much as possible. And so I personally find it beneficial, even if it's not in 10-page chunks or 20-page chunks, to still like think about, you know, scenes and chapters to make sure everything is still as urgent as possible, you know, and you're not getting like a couple, you know, pages in and you're kind of like, oh my God, it's like 5 pages of someone walking around town, you know, looking at Grindr and nameless chests. Well, you know, like you got to keep people on board. So yeah, like there's definitely more freedom if you want to break the rules, but you really got to be conscious of when you are, because, you know, it's more competitive than ever today, not just in comics, but we're competing with every other comic out there, not to mention every other video game and everything else. So yeah, like you can spread it out. You don't have to be as rigid, but I do try to remember, that there is still a structure there, or create one for ourselves so that you're not going too long before, you know, the rug is pulled out a little bit and you got to find out what happens next.
Heck yeah. And it's funny you mentioned that, because my biggest pet peeve that I constantly talk about, Dom, it will be like, you're beating a dead horse here. Issue number 1s are so important to me. There just has to be so much of you have to introduce the world, you have to introduce the characters, and you have to hook me. And I feel a lot of writers nowadays aren't able to do that as strongly. You know, a lot of, especially now that we have a lot more novel writers coming into the industry trying to write and stuff, and you can see they're writing more like chapter based and not like a first comic book issue base, you know. But yeah, I've always, specifically Project Patreon, you had a really, really strong first issue there. Like, wow. Like, all of it was just like, I do not, obviously, me and Dom won't spoil anything, but it was, it's solid hook. Like, I was very, very pleased. And it's crazy to me because I knew quite a few people that have read this, but no one talks about it, and this should be talked about more. It's really well done.
Well, I'll never argue. I think everything I do should be talked about more. Good point.
Dom, did you have a
no Project Patreon? I was like, I mean, it's funny, like you, like, again, that was something that happened during the height of lockdown, and I was actually I rewatched Evangelion, and I wanted to do, like, the pitch to Avatar was basically like, what if Kurt Swan did Evangelion? And obviously, like, that's not how the art came out, but I was like, it's, you know, it's a mech book, but the mech is a Superman robot, is actually what I told them. And that's sort of how we got there. That should be enough to tease people who haven't checked it out as well. Yeah.
Was this just your way of saying DC wouldn't let me write Superman during Brian Michael Bendis' run, so that's how you got the book, or?
No, if I was going to shade Bendis, it'd be about some other shit, but like, don't worry about that.
Awesome. Well, man, I have to say, like I said in the beginning, your portfolio is solid, and you're doing a lot of good work, and we can't wait to see what you're going to do next. I really appreciate you coming and taking the time to talk with us. Oh,
real quick.
Sorry.
I do have a couple more. I think one more thing that you.
Yeah, I was going to say, Dom, you've been quiet. You got to hit me, man.
Yeah, I do. I have to hit you. This one is special because I really enjoyed the format that Hickman came out with these back in 2020. Even though, I guess it was supposed to be something else, supposed to be the X-Men annuals, but they did a whole bunch of giant-size X-Men one-shots in 2020 with Magneto and Storm and Emma Frost and all of them. And you worked on Thunderbird. You worked on Thunderbird with Nyla Rose. How is it working with Nyla, by the way? Because I think that was when this got announced, I thought, like, holy snap, he's working with Nyla. That's like the coolest thing ever.
Are you a wrestling fan then? Can I gather that?
I wish. No, but I'm trying.
Well, the thing was, like, when we found out that Thunderbird was coming back, we were like, okay, like he's back, but what now? You know, like the funny thing is, like, I asked if you're a wrestling fan, and it's not just because of Nyla. The wrestling storyline and booking logic played into making this book happen, because one of the big questions when you're coming up with a storyline in wrestling is, you know, and then what happens on Monday, right? Like, famously, they wanted, you know, like if you want a guy to lose to some big name part-time wrestler, and he loses the title and all these things, but then it's like, okay, then that other guy disappears for 6 months. What happens on the show on Monday? And that was the thinking with Thunderbird. Okay, we brought him back, and that's this big event, but then he has to do something, or otherwise, why the fuck did we do it? And I am a wrestling fan. You might know from my everything, and as I was like thinking about how we could do this Thunderbird one shot. I don't even go there anymore. This Thunderbird one shot. I happened to be watching. Nyla and I had like talked and like shot the shit in DMs, but we weren't really super tight. But then I watched her working one night, and I noticed she was wearing, like, her gear was Mystique gear, like on TV, and I was like, shit, she is an X-Men fan. So it was important to me. You might have noticed I am not native. I mean, I'm a native of Syracuse, but it's not the same. And I was like, I want to do everything I can to make sure that we do this book correctly. And that doesn't always work out, but I had to shoot my shot. So I was sitting in the Slack, where I know that some of the editors are X-Men fans too. And I was like, listen, I'm kind of friends with Nyla. She's an X-Men fan. What if I reach out to her and see if she wants to write it? I would obviously write it with her because she hasn't written comics before. And it only took about a week, and the folks at Marvel were like, yeah, make the offer. So I DM'd her, and a DM that I think anyone would respond immediately to. I was like, hey, do you want to write some X-Men comics? And she was like, here's my phone number.
Yeah, that's not one you're going to leave on unread. That's...
But she was great. And to have David Cutler come on as well, and have the majority of the book be by Native and First Nations people, to me, this is like, and for it to come together pretty organically too, like, it's the way it should be happening. And Nyla did such a good job. I mean, she took to, oh my God, I'm going to sound like I'm fucking 90 here, but she took to writing comics like a duck to water. And, and just crushed it. I mean, everything. My job in that book was basically to just facilitate what she wanted to have happen on the page, and all of John's sort of heart, like badassness, but also the complexity behind it. It all comes from her, and I'm super proud of that book. Sometimes I can't believe it happened. Like, we try for these things so often, and it's out there, and honestly, it was kind of aggressive. I really didn't think we'd get away with some of the things that people say to him, some of the things he says to people, him beating the shit out of the local police for like 10 pages.
I honestly would have gone 30 pages with that scene, but that's just me.
Well, the thing is that the grandmother that Nyla and I created, that was an original addition that we made, and it was really important for me to spend some time with that too, because she and I mean, we get along because we are pretty similar personality-wise. We both sort of maybe come off as, I've been told that I can be sort of loud and unapproachable. And obviously Nyla plays someone who wrecks bitches on screen. And at the same time, like, we know that personality type. So it was important for us for, like, yes, John is this hard ass, but every hard ass that Nyla and I know, there's always someone, where they actually let their guard down. So the dynamic of, like, John being like, oh, and then, he's got this like 4'11" grandmother that could probably still kick the shit out of him, and taught him everything he knows, like that was also very important to us, because it rounded out what was before he came back, at least when he was alive, because he sort of half came back a couple times. He was kind of a dick in the original X-Men series. He's making fun of Cyclops, he's making fun of Wolverine, and then he basically dies out of stubbornness because he doesn't want to listen to Xavier. So I mean, we wanted to give some dimension to that. And yeah, like, I could go on and on, but I'm extremely proud of that book. And that goes for everything from what happens oh, the new costume, you know.
Yes, I love the
which
new
I'll be
costume.
honest, like, I mean, I'm bummed when people didn't like it, but if you look at who didn't like it and who did like it, the right people liked it. Just to say the people that, you know, are sort of from that background, and other people will come around in time. And I'm not here to be like, oh, fuck you if you didn't like it. If you didn't like it, that's a bummer.
You can't like everything, you know.
That is a bummer, but that's also not a reason to rework the costume with folks who actually are from that background and make something that has more meaning, you know. So I'm also really, really proud of that. The funny thing is too is that, like, I've had this happen to me a couple of times, but I was like, Nyla, we got to take those tassels off. Like, that feels like, I don't know for sure, but that just feels racist. And she was like, sometimes it's not racist when it's true, and everybody I know that's Native just loves tassels, so they're staying. And I was just like, okay. You know, like, I'm not going to argue with you on that. David and Nyla were both like, the tassels stay. And I was just like, all right, cool.
Plus, tassels are cool, bro. We need to know this right now. I know this is a gotcha question, but are you anti-tassel?
They've never worked for me, and I've worn a lot of outfits. But, you know, if I could pull them off, I would try. You know, I feel like that's not my vibe. But, you know, as a counterpoint, like, my best friends from home cut the sleeves off their tuxedos at their wedding. So there are aspects of Thunderbird's costume that I feel like that work for me, but maybe not the tassels.
Maybe. Yeah, one thing I appreciate you and everyone else at the X office is how far you guys are sort of willing to push the boundaries. Because I think in order for our stories to progress, there's no way you're not going to be able to do that without some hardship or bring other stuff to light. And I feel like the X-Men, I mean, for years, for decades, have just been you know, one of the ways that writers are able to bring a lot of these real world life issues, you know, into the fold. And so what you're doing with Marauders and obviously the Thunderbird one shot, and everyone else, I feel you guys are doing a really, really good job at bringing all of that to light.
And you said earlier, like, you hope that, like, it plays off or shows that, like, how well you guys are meshing and working with each other to build each other up. And it shows. It really does. There's this, like, there's something in the X books and all the X line that's just not found anywhere else. No offense. I mean, not that other places aren't doing it better or doing it worse or anything. It's just that there's this, like, there's this team sportness about it. You guys are, and I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm the dumb, vulgar one in the room, so everybody else deserves, like, a lot more thanks. Like, the normal like, discourse on a meeting is that, like, as like Al, Kieran, and Sai say something like stunningly smart, and then I'm like, boobs, you know. So, like, that's what I'm there for.
Now that you brought up Kieran, Judgment Days, could we bring up the fold for the Marauders graphic again, Dylan?
Yes.
Judgment Day is coming, and you are still writing this book. And
yeah, ask me to tease shit. I'm here. You got me.
Right, like we have Judgment Day tie-ins from Marauders. Are there going to be any like? I can't wait for Judgment Day. I have the Eve of Judgment one shot with me, and I can't wait for the event to start. But what are you bringing to the table as far as your Marauder tie-ins are concerned?
Well, the nice thing is, like, if I have a common critique as a creator, it's that like there's so much going on that characters rarely slow down to be characters, and so I actually flipped the script. Like, a lot of the like I'm not going to spoil it, but like the X-Men Red tie-in is like all action. It's some of the best action that Al's ever written, for example. But I've been blowing shit up for 4 issues and 5 once this comes out. And I really wanted to do the unexpected. So what you have with that's a book I read at DC. I wanted to surprise people. And what I've said is that it's an allusion to the relatively famous therapy issue of X Factor, where Doc Samson comes and runs all of the different X Factor members, through all the shit that they're dealing with. So I'm trying to think about how I can describe the issue. We have similar things going on in Marauder 6, which is our Judgment Day issue, but the setup is different. It's me. I'm trying to be additive, so there will be a new character, not joining the team, but debuting and with a new role on Krakoa in the book, teaming up with Somnus for some hyperbaric time therapy. For Dragon Ball Z fans,
love
you
that.
did get the reference.
I love that so much.
But at the same time, like, it'll be a chance to really dig the knife in, right? Because, like, I'm not going to get into how he does it. You'll have to read, but it's pretty clear that people are being judged. It's in the title, and we're going for. I mean, we are asking these characters the most heart-wrenching questions in this issue, which is how you find out more about them. And looked like the knife is in the heart for all of them, man. Like I'm like damn, like I'm being mean, but I'm not being mean. You know, the villain of the book is being mean to try to sort of find out who these characters really are and see if they're worth it. So I'm super, super proud of this issue. Like, for folks who really wanted me to dig in more to this, to not the softer side, but the character and emotional side of the Marauders, it's happening. And we've already sort of hinted at some of the wounds we're going to be exploring. You know, you saw Tempo talk about her relationship with time in this week's Marauders and how it's different from someone like Bishop. And there's as a chronokinetic versus a time traveler. And there's a long data page about it that gives in detail. But the short version is, if time is this giant river, Bishop is on a little boat, you know, going up and down the river as a time traveler. But as a chronokinetic, it's more like if you were a hydrokinetic, and she's actually manipulating the river itself. And there are consequences to that, and that really give her a secret pain that I think is really interesting. And we've hinted at that in 4. It'll come up again in 5, and then you'll see exactly what she's talking about at 6. And that kind of goes for a lot of the characters. Like I said, like it's kind of like we're switching hats. I'm not usually the feelings guy. I'm usually the punch in the face guy. And now Al's doing the punches, other people doing the punches, and I'm letting you know sort of who these characters are and how these missions are affecting them. Because like, it's not just the readers. Like, these characters haven't had time to rest because they immediately walked into this giant, you know, billions of years long conspiracy. And as with anybody in a moment of crisis, they're like running out of adrenaline. Eventually you hit that wall and you're like, shit, I have to actually realize what just happened, you know, for the past 2 days when I was 2 billion years in the past or something.
Is that how you were able to like write Cassandra? How did, because you are writing this whole mob, for lack of a better word. I have no idea what I just said, but you brought in Cassandra Nova, Xavier, to the board. Like, was that like when you pitched Marauders and whenever you did it, were you like, man, we got to get this person who's killed, you know, all these whatever mutants or whatever into the fold and have her just sort of butt heads with the rest of the team?
Well, we needed a surprise member, and she was one of the big pieces that hadn't really been touched on in the Krakoan era. And I'll be honest, like, the character says this, but I also feel that, first of all, Cassandra, like, is a monster. Like, we're not here to redeem her. And, like, her point of view is that she did that, now she's doing this, but this doesn't make up for that. She also doesn't care if it ever does.
Right.
But I also kind of thought it was bullshit, you know, like Sinister stole a native guy's genes and was a Nazi. He appropriated, I mean, he's like the Rachel Dolezal of mutants, basically. He stole Thunderbird's DNA, and now he's sitting in the fucking council. Apocalypse didn't kill thousands and thousands of mutants like Cassandra, but he has killed hundreds of thousands of people and a shitload of mutants over the past thousands of years. And he's their murder guy in the fucking Crucible, and he's on the council. Dr. Nemesis, also a former Nazi, and he's just running around. Bishop, by his own admission, when he was going mad in Messiah War, also killed thousands and thousands of people. He said it, you know? So, and yet for some reason, everybody just gets over that, both in the audience and not all, but some people in the audience, and within story, absolutely. Almost nobody talks about Bishop committing mass murder these days. And so I took it as an opportunity for her to say, I wonder what the difference is. And the difference is obvious, like, she's facing the same double standard when it comes to being a genocidal monster that many people face in their normal life. And that's, like, and of course, like, Cassandra's the perfect character to talk about that, because she will push every button possible and not give a fuck.
Right.
You know? And I also wanted to unify that version of her with what happened in X-Men Red, which I thought was powerful. But I also, as you saw, like, she can't just be a weeping, like, crybaby forever. So I wanted to position and see that, yes, Jean, like, did something real and lasting to her. Now she hates everyone else and not mutants. And now she can feel compassion. But she's still like a psychopath. So yeah, like she likes feeling bad almost as much as she likes feeling good, because before she couldn't feel anything. And like, yeah, now she will do anything to protect these instead of anything to eradicate them. But she's still not like safe, you know, as I hope people have seen. Like if she woke up one day, she's not really running her plans by anyone else.
Right.
So if she woke up one day and thought that what was best for mutants was for her to just like boop and blow up Charles's head, she would absolutely do it. You know, like like it's not like she's really fielding other opinions. And also, yeah, it's just been, I mean, it's an instant tension machine because Pride needs her to uncover this mystery, but let's not forget she fucking killed Pride's dad. So
on Genosha, yeah, you are. I feel like that's a deep cut that most people don't know about, but yeah,
I mean they should. She literally says it in issue 1.
Right. I told Dylan about that earlier because I was rereading Marauders, and I mean it's insane because like is Cassandra going to, because you're working with Cy and with Kieran, or is she going to see Charles and David at some point in the future?
Let's see how long she lasts.
You never know. Anything's possible.
I mean,
right?
she appears in Judgment Day, for example. Like she doesn't just only belong to our book. But that said, like there's a very clear end game going on with Cassandra, which I can tease more about when we're off the air. But the fact is that like she's like, but she is useful now. But I think it's pretty clear that especially the current Pride, who sort of like, you know, went real hard and into the gray area to get her revenge on Shaw. Like she hasn't forgotten what Cassandra did. You know, so I guess watch this space, I would say. Like it's not as though she's just over it, but she also, you know, knows that Cassandra has worth. When and if she ever runs out of having that worth, you know, might be revenge time. But also, like, yes, it is fun writing her. Of course, it's fun writing her. Like, I'm a Grant Morrison guy. That I feel like, again, that's not a secret. And so Cassandra was also the first X-Men villain that I met, like, issue 1 first appearance ever. You know, especially of villains that have lasted. So, and I like that she just like she's, you know, it's funny. People think that there are, you know, they see that she's breaking the rules of Krakoa and that, you know, she's not in the pit and that's a plot hole. It's not a plot hole. She's doing it on purpose because she knows people are afraid of her, which might come out in the book as well in the future. But, you know, it's not that like, ooh, we forgot that she's hurting Krakoa. No, she's doing it on purpose because everybody's fucking terrified of her and she enjoys it. And only she knows for real, you know, what her end game is. So it's nice to have that in the book. And yeah, it's nice to have someone who can just blow up any situation, right? Like most times Gladiator shows up and everybody's scared, but Gladiator shows up in Marauders. She's excited because last time she made him wet his pants, you know. Exactly. So
yeah, because I mean, like you give the same energy to Cassandra as I said, like Zeb Wells and I guess now Kieran are doing with Mr. Sinister, and you know Ewing, and before the Hickman was doing with Magneto. So it's cool to see you give this just like powerful and just fun, but you know vibe that to Cassandra. You know,
I mean, the thing is, she's kind of like Sinister, but I don't think she's as camp. I think that she is a little more vulgar. Like, have you ever seen? I said that she was like Catherine Trammell in like the first interviews, but there's a way, like she just says outrageous things and enjoys it. Have you ever seen Hannibal the movie, which I don't think is that great, but
yes, I have.
Yes. You know how Hannibal Lecter just says things that are graphic and disturbing, but he says them like he's ordering a coffee. Yeah. You know, like yeah. He's got Gary Oldman is like doing the autoerotic asphyxiation. He's like, why don't you try cutting your face off and feeding it to your dog? Yeah. And to me, that's kind of that is kind of Cassandra, right? Like she says things probably in a normal like tone of voice, even though it's a comic, that are horrific. Right. And again enjoys it. And at the same time, like I think that, I mean, she has done unforgivable things, and we're never going to forgive her. Like I think people see that now. But like the best villains, I mean, she thinks that she's the hero of her story even before. I mean, yeah, she hates mutants. And in her mind, I'm careful to say because there's not a real justification. There is no justification for what she did. But I would say from her perspective, her first experience was being hated and feared by one of the most powerful mutants on the planet. Like, so like she has, for all of her bravado and acting like she didn't feel before, I think she actually feels a lot because her whole life is built around being attacked by her brother in the womb. And I got plenty of womb and choking jokes in there, which I'm really excited about as well.
Awesome. Well, before we get out of here, I have probably the most important question that we always ask every single guest that we have, and that is Cyclops or Wolverine?
Oh, I mean, if those are the only choices, easily Wolverine.
There you go.
Yeah,
we have found in our 2 years of podcasting together. Wow, just realized that. It's crazy, Dom. That you are either a Wolverine fan or a Cyclops fan. Like, you can respect both of them, but you're always leaning towards one more than the other, you know?
I think it's hard for me because, I mean, like many people my age, like when I think of Cyclops, I really like modern Cyclops, but I can't get like out of my head like the whiny soft boy in the 90s show that was just pouting all the time. And to be sure, that's Wolverine too, but Wolverine doesn't pout, he broods. It's totally different.
He
like Cyclops, yeah, like Jean faints, but Cyclops is always worrying about her fainting, and anyway. I will say though, I think like the classic 80s, not his 90s, which has too many pouches, but I think the classic 80s yellow briefs, blue, like I think that is one of the most classic costumes ever. So if I had to pick on style, it actually would be the reverse. It would be Cyclops, because I only really like the brown and tan Wolverine costume, controversially. But if I had to pick on character, you know, look at me. I'm an angry, sad person myself, so how could I not pick Wolverine? I'm not Canadian, though.
Right. I have to say my favorite Cyclops is the X Factor, the white X with the blue one. I don't know why.
Listen. Those costumes, I love them all. Like, yeah. I almost wish...
Even the X one? With the X-Face one that they did?
No. I mean, I love all of the very simple X Factor costumes. I love just the giant X with the different colors. I would love to be able to, well, actually, the Marauders do all get sort of a unified costume theme in Arc 2. But, no, I love those. I love the Cyclops one. I'm also a huge fan of Big Hands, Big Feet Beast, but no hair. So I love when he has I want to say his version of that is yellow and red.
Red and blue, I think. I think it's red and blue.
I think he has two. I'm going to challenge you to an internet.
Yeah.
But because he definitely has red and blue, but I believe that he had like a bizarrely like burnt umber and yellow one too. But anyway, I love all those costumes. It's really happy. My favorite thing about the Krakoan era is not the character stuff. It's that characters can wear any costume they want in any issue. And I sure take advantage of it coming up. Don't worry about that.
We were both correct. It was a red and blue and then a yellow and maroon one. So there you go. We were both right.
Well, I am half gay, so I said burnt umber, but maroon is acceptable.
Sorry. Yeah, I only know the basic hues. But yeah, thank you once again, man. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and talk nerd stuff with us. We absolutely appreciate it. We're fans of your stuff, and I'm gonna be diving real deep into your Aftershock stuff because I've been super impressed with the 3 books I read today.
Well, thank you, and I would happily come back anytime. But yes, please keep an eye on Marauders. There's so much. I mean, like I talk about all my stuff, but I'm just so freaking proud of that book. And I just have to say, like, Eleonora gets better every single issue. I mean, her work has always been amazing, but she just wrapped issue 8, and it's like a whole nother level. We can talk about that off the air if you want a little bit, but it's a whole nother level, and I'm just super pumped. It's a hard book to draw. And it only gets harder as things go on. And much like with Riley, like she not only does she accept the challenge, but she like rewrites the rules of answering the challenge. So like to me, like that's the best kind of collaboration. And yeah, she's just fucking killing it. So you guys, like, I'm very excited for you folks to see what's coming up.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Steve, for joining you in NERDOM. As always, we'd love to see you again. And as always, I tell my fans, you be you guys, stay safe, and have a webtastic Wednesday and the rest of the week.